Okay, so
And hello and welcome everyone to the WorldOregon Great Decisions webinar on the Quad. We'll be starting in just a minute on South Asia and the Quad. We're excited to have you joining us here with our special presenter all the way from Bangladesh, Rudabeh Shahid. She is up in the middle of the night because she cares about you, the audience, and we're thrilled to have her here. We had some early internet hiccups. Hopefully that will not pop up again, but if it does, don't worry. She is a pro at this and is really, again, going above and beyond. It is the middle of the night there, but she really cares about the audience. So we'll be getting back to her in just 1 minute. Just a couple notes of overall thanks, just to say thank you for joining us. We'll be posting in the chat some neat links, but this has been a wonderful year of great decisions in 2022 with some fantastic presenters. And we couldn't have done it without first the partnership of the Foreign Policy Association, but then even more importantly, our partners in the Global Leadership and Management specialization of the Masters of Public Administration program at Portland State University. I'd like to take a moment to thank Kevin Teskes and the grad students of the program. They helped us engage even more deeply through the conversation sessions that many of you joined in, and appreciate all of those who participated. We're going to post again in the chat our YouTube playlist of all the 7 previous ones that you can watch if you missed before, and today's will be posted next week. And lots of our other programs, including our rapid response program on the terrible Russian invasion of Ukraine, is also on our YouTube channel. So again, a huge thanks to all of you who've joined us throughout. I know it's been a little bit of hiccups with the Foreign Policy Association, had some challenges in shipping out the books. Glad everybody sort of had patience with that. We're thrilled you've made it here for week 8. For the last and by no means the least talk, because we're thrilled to have Rudabeh Shahid. Again, she is a doctor and a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council South Asia Center. She teaches for numerous colleges and university classes, and she is giving us some expert background on this issue. Hopefully many of you had a chance to read the article. We will post her link to her bio in the chat. And without further ado, our guest of the day. Thank you so much for joining us.
So good morning, everybody. And it's 2 a.m. here in Dhaka, Bangladesh. I am Rudabeh Shahid, a non-resident senior fellow at the South Asia Center of the Atlantic Council. So thank you for inviting me, and welcome to my presentation titled Smaller Countries of South Asia and the Quad. So what is the Quad anyway? The Quad is an initiative created by 4 democracies, the US, India, Japan, and Australia, back in 2004, with the intention of providing humanitarian support for countries hit by the Indian Ocean tsunami. It appears that in recent years, it has been rejuvenated to counter the growing Chinese sphere of influence in the Indo-Pacific region, as you see here. So now, why is the Indian Ocean region important? The maritime strategist Alfred Mahan had said, whoever controls the Indian Ocean will dominate Asia, as the destiny of the world will be decided there. Now, let us consider the strategic significance of the Indian Ocean region, especially for China. In 2016, the annual trade from the Hormuz Strait over on this side to the Malacca Strait on this side was 18 trillion US dollars. The growing Chinese economy requires massive supplies of energy for its industrial production, with 53% of total Chinese energy coming from the Middle East and 23% from Africa. Sorry. Now let us consider the okay, I think I missed a slide. Right. Okay. Right. Something wrong. Okay. According to some security analysts, China has a strategic thing going on here called the String of Pearls in this Indian Ocean region. This is a geopolitical hypothesis proposed by several researchers in the US back in 2004 to refer to the network of Chinese military and commercial facilities along its sea lines of communication, which extend from the Chinese mainland over here to the port of Sudan over here in the Horn of Africa. Sorry. Okay. As you can see from these two maps that I have over here, the String of Pearls is important for the oil shipping lines, as you can see here, and the energy shipping routes to China. So this String of Pearls strategy of China in the Indian Ocean region should also be seen alongside the Belt and Road Initiative of China. In 2013, China proposed the BRI to improve connectivity and cooperation on a transcontinental scale. As of February 2021, 140 countries have joined the BRI by signing a Memorandum of Understanding with Beijing. Morgan Stanley has predicted that China's overall expenses over the lifetime of the BRI could reach somewhere between 1.2 to 1.3 trillion by 2027. So now let's get back to the Quad. I mentioned a few minutes ago that this is an initiative created by 4 democracies in 2004 with the intention of providing humanitarian relief for countries hit by the Indian Ocean tsunami, which you can see over here. So this initiative is called a Quad because it's a quadrilateral triangle, which you can virtually draw, and it spans 2 oceans and several continents connecting the 4 countries, which are part of this alliance. In 2021, 42% of the world's exports and 38% of global imports passed through this region. So after many years, the Quad was reestablished in 2017 as an informal security medium with the implicit intention of countering China's growing assertiveness in the maritime domain. The navies of these 4 countries participated in a joint exercise in November 2020. All 4 countries have good reasons to come together at this point in time. The US has $1.9 trillion worth of trade passing through the Indo-Pacific region. India and Japan have territorial disputes with China, which have intensified over the last few years. Australia continues to bear the brunt of Chinese economic sanctions after suggesting a WHO investigation into the origins of COVID-19. And China actually applied these trade bans and tariffs on at least 20 billion worth of Australian exports to China. So the former Prime Minister of Australia, Kevin Rudd, points out that as late as November of 2017, China didn't take the Quad seriously. The Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said at that time that while referring, when he referred to the Quad, back in 2017, he said that they are like the sea foam in the Pacific or Indian Ocean. They get some attention, but will soon dissipate. But in March 2021, when the Quad held its first leader-level summit, Chinese officials saw this as something to be concerned about. In 2021, Xi Jinping warned that China faces a struggle over the future of the international order, with the United States determined to prevent China's rise. Prime Minister Rudd believes that the Quad is problematic for China's strategy because of the this pact's aim to unify a multilateral coalition of resistance across the Indo-Pacific region. Yet, Rudd doesn't mention the dynamics of other countries with China. So this is where the geopolitics of South Asia should be considered. The geopolitical significance of South Asia is not just that it borders the Indian Ocean region, but also some of the youngest and fastest growing economies are located here. It also serves as a critical sea route for trade and serves as a gateway to the Middle East and East Asia. South Asia also experienced some geopolitical shifts recently, such as the American withdrawal from Afghanistan, and there are resilient and expanding trade networks in this, terrorist networks in this region. And most importantly, for the West, there is the visibility of China in South Asia. At the same time, as you can see from this map, in some of the northern areas of India, so this is India and this is China, Pakistan, Tibet. So in some of these northern areas, China and India have territorial disputes. So one area is this region called Aksai Chin in the west, in the greater Kashmir region, which is also disputed between India and Pakistan. But on the northeastern side of India, there is this state called Arunachal Pradesh of India, and China claims that it's pretty much the whole state belongs to China. In countries of South Asia, China has built ports, which it claims to be ports of friendship. These include the Gwadar port over here in Pakistan, the Hambantota port over here in Sri Lanka. And there are ports that are probably in the making in Myanmar and Bangladesh over the next couple years. So it happens that all these ports are located in countries surrounding India. And so some observers from South Asia and beyond claim that this idea is actually to choke India. So it appears that smaller countries who are traditionally in the sphere of influence of China, of India, are leaning closer to China. So the question now is, why are these countries trying to move away from India? In April 2021, the Chinese ambassador to Bangladesh expressed that Bangladesh should not join the Quad. So if countries in the Indo-Pacific refuse to join, how can the Quad's goal be achieved? And also, how is it possible to make the Quad and such alliances attractive for them? So while most of the countries by itself are not small by any means, for example, Nepal has a population of 29 million, Sri Lanka has a population of 22 million, and Bangladesh has a population of 165 million. India is the most dominant country in South Asia, where with approximately 75% of the landmass and 80% of the GDP belonging to, of course, India. It also happens that India exercises quite a bit of influence on the domestic and foreign policies of these countries. Such a scenario has traditionally been perceived by elites of these countries as India's big brother attitude, as they feel that they get a smaller share in their bilateral relations with India. Therefore, these elites practice something called balancing, and this is basically balancing their foreign relations between India and China. And over the years, these countries have grown closer to China. And now let us look at 4 of these countries and their relations with India and China one by one. So now let us first look at Nepal. So Nepal is one nation which is not part of the Indian Ocean region, but it's between India and China, and it's landlocked. And to a Western observer, Nepal and India may appear to be the most culturally indistinguishable nations, 2 nations in the South Asian region, since both countries have Hindu majorities and many other cultural similarities. In 1950, the 2 countries signed a treaty of peace and friendship, which allowed the nationals of these countries to live, work, and study in each other's countries. Yet the implications of this treaty made Nepal heavily reliant on India for trade. This was exposed in 1989 when the government of India placed a formal blockade on Nepal, and another informal blockade happened again in 2015. In 2020, the latest anti-India outburst in Nepal was seen across social media platforms when the hashtag #BackOffIndia, which you see over here, was trending. This was apparently due to Nepal being angered because it claimed that 400 square kilometers of a strip of land over here, Nepal said that it is actually part of its territory, while India showed that it's part of its territory on a map. And now China is increasingly seen favorably in Nepal, and it is seen as a good option for fulfilling the country's growing infrastructural needs, including building a railroad from Tibet into Nepal. Next, let us look at India's southern neighbor, Sri Lanka. India has been involved in the politics of this island ever since the 80s because it intervened during the Tamil Sinhalese civil war. The presence of Indian troops to assist in implementing the India-Sri Lanka Peace Accord, which called for creating a federal structure in Sri Lanka, didn't go well with the majority Sinhalese people. While the minority Tamils were not happy with the peace accord, and an extremist group called the LTT, or the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, assassinated the ex-Prime Minister of India, Rajiv Gandhi, the majority Sinhalese too were dissatisfied. According to experts, Sinhalese fear was that the federal state structure, which was stated in the India-Sri Lanka Peace Accord, would lead to the creation of an independent Tamil homeland, or even a fear of territorial annexation by India, because a big Tamil population lives right across the Palk Strait, which you see over here in this map, in the Indian state of Tamil Nadu. This distrust led to growing closeness to China over the years. However, this has led to a bad scenario where loans from China have led to something called a debt trap, because Sri Lanka could not pay back the loans on time. As you see here, this is the Hambantota port in southern Sri Lanka. This port and 15,000 acres of land surrounding it was leased to a venture led by China Merchants Port Holding Company for 99 years in return for 1.1 billion US dollars in 2017. In recent years, another one of India's southern neighbor, the Maldives, has also expressed displeasure with its mighty neighbor up north. During the former President Yamin's tenure in 2017, the Maldives signed a trade agreement with China in 2017, making it a major source of income for tourism. After that, China funded major infrastructural work, which many South Asia observers pointed out was pushing the Maldives into a debt trap. Under this new leadership, which started in around 2019, there was a change of government in the Maldives. India and Western allies made it a priority to push the new administration to adopt an India First policy for strengthening economic and defense cooperation. However, this has led to more problems in recent years as supporters of the India Out movement question the Indian military presence in the southern part of the country, saying it threatens the sovereignty of the Maldives. Now, let's move on to Bangladesh. So this is perhaps the most interesting relationship between two countries, that is India and Bangladesh, in the South Asian region. During Bangladesh's War of Independence from Pakistan in 1971, India sheltered 10 million refugees from territories of what used to be East Pakistan as they fled a crackdown by the Pakistan military. For 9 months, India also provided covert support to the guerrilla fighters of East Pakistan who were fighting the Pakistan Army. Finally, in December of that year, the Indian Army entered the territory of East Pakistan in December, which led to the surrender of the Pakistan Army and the creation of the new nation Bangladesh. Now, perhaps 50 years in, this relationship is perhaps not as thriving. Since the rise of the Hindu right-wing BJP in India, Indian politicians have routinely picked up the controversial topic of undocumented migration and have used dehumanizing language to describe Bangladeshis building a national imagination of a foreign Muslim community trying to eat away from the Hindu national body. However, while this kind of rhetoric is fairly recent, other issues have been there for much longer. First, there is the unresolved issue of the sharing of the water of the river Tista, which is a tributary of the Ganges River. This is a long-standing dispute over the appropriate allocation of water from the Ganges River, which flows from northern India into Bangladesh. The second issue relates to border killings of over 1,200 Bangladeshi citizens between 2001 and 2021 by India's border security forces. The reason which Indian authorities provide is to prevent cattle smuggling and illegal migration. Finally, another outstanding issue between India and Bangladesh is related to uneven trade, where Bangladeshi traders complain that they have to face various non-tariff barriers while exporting to India, but it is not the same when Indian traders try exporting to Bangladesh. On the other hand, China's relationship with Bangladesh started off on, let's be very frank, on a terrible note. Mao's China opposed Bangladesh's independence in 1971 and sided with the Pakistan establishment of the time. In 1972, China used its veto power as a permanent member of the UN to deny membership to Bangladesh. In fact, until 1975, China refused to extend diplomatic recognition to the new country. Now, China happens to be the largest source of foreign direct investment and the top trading partner with Bangladesh. Observers have cited that China's non-interference in Bangladesh's domestic affairs makes it a partner of choice. Interestingly, while India's treatment of its Muslim population has led to anti-India sentiments in sections of Bangladeshi civil society, there appears to be no public discourse surrounding China's treatment of Uyghur Muslims. So it appears that Bangladesh has avoided the Chinese debt trap for so far at least. When visiting Bangladesh in October 2016, the Chinese President Xi Jinping had pledged 20 billion US dollars in soft loans. After that, at least 27 projects were earmarked for implementation, but getting the funds from China has been quite a long process. In fact, so far, only about 6% of Bangladesh's national debt is actually owed to China. Some observers have said that Bangladesh has successfully balanced India and China, along with other nations such as Japan and Korea, for its infrastructural development projects, and thus has effectively avoided this Chinese debt trap, at least for now. However, no one knows the future. A week ago, a Chinese company proposed to reclaim land from the sea in the southeastern city of Chittagong of Bangladesh to build a 60 square kilometer smart city, including a metro rail line connecting the Chittagong train station and the airport. And this was a cost of 2.2 billion. This infrastructure project would include an exchange for a share of land to the Chinese company. There are plans to get this deal signed by May 2023. It is quite attractive, this project, because it is reportedly going to create 20,000 jobs and raise the GDP by 1.1 to about 3%. Yet one prominent economist, Professor Mustafizur Rahman of the think tank Center for Policy Dialogue in Bangladesh, said that one should view this deal with caution, as he pointed out that taking control of Bangladesh's land might go against the sovereignty of the country. So at the end of the day, there is a need for the US to revisit its South Asia policy. The foreign policy of the current US administration has been to manage competition with a rising China. For this reason, there have been efforts to revive trust and confidence among traditional allies, maintaining stability at regional levels and also emphasizing on alliance building, for example, with the Quad, of course. At this time, there is an increasing need to go beyond the India-Pakistan focused South Asia policy of the US and not just depend on India. For this, the US needs to prioritize bilateral or multilateral engagements with the smaller countries of the region by genuinely understanding their interests, views, and concerns. Also, let me add here that, in fact, one way to start to engage respectfully with these countries would actually be to not call them smaller countries in the first place, but instead, a good term would be to call them the non-nuclear five, comprising of Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, the Maldives, and Bangladesh. So thank you everyone for your time, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have during this Q&A session, and apologies for the internet issues when I started. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. This is Tim DeRoche, the Director of Programs. We've got a few questions here. Hopefully, audience can submit some more. It is a really complex topic that I think is, in many ways outside of the usual kind of world watcher realm, because we are so often focused on sort of big, great power things. And as you pointed out, we often incorrectly and disrespectfully refer to them as smaller countries. I couldn't help but think, about the Quad. If the US had not exited the Trans-Pacific Partnership, would this kind of an approach or an alliance actually even be necessary? And is this a good alternative in terms of, sort of containment?
That's a difficult question, and I'll try my best to answer it. I mean, there are a few ways of looking at this, of course. So the Quad, I mean, as I said, I mean, it's an alliance with four countries, between four countries. And I think the issue with the Quad is that China, for example, tries many things with soft power. So it tries like vaccine diplomacy, and also cultural, in the cultural dimension. I mean, for example, from Bangladesh, there are many students going these days to China to study medicine, which wasn't the case even say like 10 years ago. So I think the Quad, I mean, besides the security aspect, if it has to get other countries on board, I think it has to have like smaller countries. I mean, maybe not formally, but at least, somehow like informally part of it. And I think, I think a major issue, like especially in South Asia, is that there's probably no region where like one single country probably dominates. I mean, I guess like the exception would be North America with the US, but I mean, given India's size, for example, I mean, countries in the region have traditionally balanced with China, and now with China becoming more and more powerful, it has done that. I mean, in terms of the Quad being useful, well, I mean, it's not just the Quad, right? I mean, there was the AUKUS, which came up like in September, where the US, the UK, and Australia formed an alliance, and the US gave some submarines to Australia, and that did not go well with France. France being not a small country at all. I mean, I don't remember in diplomatic history when France actually recalled its ambassadors from Australia and Washington, D.C. And that happened. So I think the usefulness, I think the way to go about it is probably to use it, I mean, in a way that would not probably make other countries angry, or like, I don't know, I mean, what's probably the word? Not very happy. I mean, the very good example would be France, right? I mean, with the AUKUS, I mean, France was supposed to, they had a deal with Australia, but that did not go as planned because the US gave submarines. And so the same thing is with the Quad. I mean, effectively, the idea is to actually get other countries on board, but not in the sense that, make it in a way that it's bullying the countries to join it. I mean, at least, the elites, if they see it like that, the politicians and the policymakers, then that would probably push them further towards China. So I think that should also be kept in mind.
So you brought up a couple of times the debt trap. And do you think that the Quad Alliance could act as a wedge more for countries who have been snared in China's debt trap?
So, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, some countries such as Sri Lanka, I mean, I don't know how much they would cooperate because they are in a debt trap. Maldives, well, in a sense, India had to bail them out. So, I mean, we probably would not see Maldives going that way. So yeah, the debt trap is a problem, and I mean, the Chinese government and many scholars say there's nothing like a debt trap. But I mean, you just have to look a little bit west to Africa, and you see, countries getting into this kind of debt trap. The problem is that I mean, especially in developing countries, not just developed countries. I mean, the leaders probably think like, say, 3 to 4 years ahead, not like 20 years ahead. So they think, say, about the next elections, and then they, for campaigning, they can say, oh, we build this road, we build these bridges, and all this, and for that, nobody's going to be thinking where they took the loans from. I mean, just a regular guy. That's where the problem is, that because China is just giving out money like that, and the West does not have something, I mean, a model that would be something similar. I think, leaders, I mean, of these countries find it very attractive. I mean, I just gave you an example for Bangladesh. I mean, for now, it has been balancing really well with India and China, and not just that. I mean, Japan is actually the biggest donor. And then there's Korea, of course. But increasingly, I mean, some of the offers are so good. I mean, last week, this offer came and everybody was so excited. And me, like, understanding a little bit of geopolitics, I'm like, no, I don't think this is a good idea. This is just something too good to be true.
So, to kind of follow up, we have a question in the Q&A that about the BRI agreements, so that if debt is not repaid, do the Chinese automatically take over property and assets in these situations?
Well, I mean, it depends on the agreement that the Chinese companies have with each country. And so I mean, the countries actually know what they're signing up for on paper. They think that they can somehow pay it on time, but probably things happen. And then, yes, I mean, for example, in the case of Sri Lanka, I mean, they couldn't pay back the loan. And then China said, oh, okay, well, then what can we do? We will take this over for 99 years and 15,000 acres of land surrounding it. In Bangladesh, actually, this whole agreement actually says that China will reclaim land and wants part of it on lease. So that is part of the agreement. That's not even like if Bangladesh does not get to pay the loan back. So that's the thing, that if these if the countries get into some kind of a debt, I mean, it can happen. Yes, that is a possibility.
So you've mentioned a lot of other countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives. What do other countries in the region think about the Quad? And do we think that the Quad could, I don't know, become a non-net at some point or expand? Is it taken seriously as an approach? And do other countries feel any sense of support or exclusion?
Well, I mean, as I said, the Chinese ambassador to Bangladesh said last year in April that Bangladesh should not join the Quad. There wasn't anything formal, as we probably read, that came up where the US or India or any other country said that, well, we've invited another country, such as Bangladesh or any other country. So it doesn't, I mean, the countries, I mean, at least from that statement, the people, the policymakers in Bangladesh actually thought that was, that was an instruction from the Chinese not to do it, and they felt that was not something that they should be doing, because that's a foreign policy decision of Bangladesh. But on the other hand, I mean, these countries, well, I mean, they would be pressured at one point, and then they would have to choose between India and China. And the thing is, with India's I mean, wouldn't say like conflicts, but they would, I mean, this kind of big brother attitude as these countries think, then this might actually, I mean, any kind of bullying or any kind of pressurizing, that's probably the word, would actually push these countries more towards China. And yeah, and that's a possibility. That's a possibility.
So as you might predict, we've got some questions about what is going on in Ukraine with Russia. Have any of the South Asian countries condemned Russia for their invasion? And is there a fear that there will be blowback from China if they do?
So India and China actually did, I mean, they did not vote at all in this, because China is part of the, is a permanent member of the Security Council. India is temporary, so they did not vote at all. Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, they also did not. They just did not vote. Nepal and Bhutan actually did vote against it, against Russia. And Myanmar, if we go a little bit east, they actually voted against. The interesting thing is that there's a military junta in Myanmar, but that seat over there in the UN, it's occupied by government in exile, the National Unity Government, the representative of that. And they actually voted against Russia. So, so every country is seeing their own bilateral relationship with Russia. I mean, India and Russia have a treaty going back to 1971, when actually the Bangladesh war happened. And Bangladesh has really good ties with Russia. So does many other countries, including Sri Lanka. And by the way, I mean, when the invasion of Ukraine was happening, Imran Khan, the prime minister of Pakistan, was actually sitting in Russia. So we don't really see, I mean, most of the countries, you know, voting against Russia, because they have their needs, they have their own relations. And Pakistan, if you go a little bit to the west, they have their energy need. They're thinking of building a pipeline all the way from Russia through China and then through Pakistan. So all these countries would just stay neutral. And I would like to add that what happened in Ukraine, that might empower China. We've been talking about China, you know, thinking of Taiwan in the short run, not even in the long run. But as I said, there is this disputed territory between India and China, this state called Arunachal Pradesh, which is part of northeastern India. And what might happen is that the Chinese might want to walk in there. That would make it very complicated for, say, Bangladesh, which is very close to northeast India, and they would be stuck between these two Asian powers, China and India. So yeah.
Well, you know, this has come up a lot in your talk, is the territorial disputes. I mean, they abound. I mean, we see them in South China Sea, Kashmir, Maldives, Bangladesh. Now we're, of course, seeing this with, you know, eastern sections of Ukraine. So is it going to be harder to form alliances and coalitions and have something like the Quad be successful when so many of the countries we've discussed are involved in their own disputes that are going to have ripple effects for the region?
So the Quad did not, like, I mean, as an alliance, did not have any statement against the Russian invasion of Ukraine, simply because, I mean, on this, they're not on the same plane. I mean, India has a long, you know, I mean, history with Russia. I mean, going back to 1971 with that Treaty of Friendship that Prime Minister Indira Gandhi signed And I mean, they're just not. I mean, with these conflicts coming up, I mean, every country would be looking at their national interest, and that might go against the Quad's interest, because all the four countries, what they essentially agree on is some kind of an anti-China alliance. But then, if you have to think of, say, Russia here in this case, India probably will not do anything. And then these other countries, I mean, the US, of course, would. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I mean, an anti-China feeling brought them together, but that doesn't mean that on every other issue they're going to be having the same stand. No.
Well, so if India can team up with an alliance on China and then remain non-aligned with regard to the Russian invasion, what does this mean for, say, the US relationship with India going forward?
So US and India relationship is based on two things. One is containment of China. The other thing is trade. I mean, India is a massive, massive market. So even when things related to human rights happened in India, with particularly the Muslim minorities, I mean, with lynchings and the recent hijab ban, for example, in the southern state of Karnataka. I mean, human rights organizations in the US actually give statements against it. But then the government, of course, does not say much, which is very different when we talk about the Uyghurs of China. India is actually, I mean, I don't think India, I mean, the US would actually try to say anything against India. But because the whole idea is to contain China. Yeah, I mean, an India-China alliance, is that your question? I'm sorry.
I think it was the question was really about a little bit of a disconnect between an alliance that is about containing China, yet there is also, India is also being non-aligned on the Russia issue, but how does that affect the US-India relationship?
I don't think it would affect the US relationship, US-India relationship at all, because as I said, the US and India relationship is based on two things, which is containment of China, and the other thing is India being just a very big economy, and the US has to do trade with India. So I don't think that would affect this relationship at all.
So you mentioned some of the big energy infrastructure that is being planned, you know, moving through that region. How might a protracted conflict in the Baltics have a ripple effect for the Quad and security for some of these smaller countries? And I'm sorry, I said smaller countries again. But...
No. I mean, the thing is, I was actually in a meeting yesterday, and somebody said that the idea of calling countries small is related to what? I mean, is it related to a neighbor, or is it related to like a global scale? So that's the thing, that when we use these terms, we probably have to be a little useful, careful. So yeah, I mean, there might be effects with all these smaller countries, but the smaller countries, at the end of the day, I mean, they have, if we are talking about South Asia in particular, they are surrounded by India and China. I mean, China does not have a border with Bangladesh, but it has with, say, Nepal. So they are more interested in how, you know, these other things in many parts of the world, it affects India or China, and then it would affect these other countries. But otherwise, I mean, for these smaller countries, their foreign policy is very much centered around India and China.
So are you able to comment on the latest on China's aggressive territorial claims in the South China Sea?
Yeah, I mean, they have been claiming it, if the Chinese could have it, they would claim 90% of it from the last time I read. But of course, there are many other countries which are not small by any means. I mean, in terms of GDP per capita or size, anyways. So I don't think. I mean, this would be a very big issue. I mean, but I think the main issue that might be flaring up in the long run is with Taiwan. Of course, the U.S. has a base, but Taiwan being relatively small and with Chinese aggression and of course what happened with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I mean, the Chinese would be empowered, and I think that is where it might flare up.
So, when it comes to China, the US has typically wielded a more heavy-handed carrot and stick diplomacy. But I'm wondering, do you think that the US could alternately be engaging more soft power in its relations with the country of the Quad and its surrounding nations if we were trying to really influence geopolitical shift in the region? And what that might look like?
Right. That is actually a very, very good question. And I think there are a couple ways to do this. And the US actually has a lot of soft power, I mean, influence all over the world, including in South Asia. I mean, if you look at India, I mean, just the fact that India has such a big English-speaking population, but even the neighboring countries, I mean, Hollywood, for example, is very popular. But many students from here, from South Asia, they go and study in the US. That is the country of choice for students. Followed by the UK, of course, these days to Canada and Australia. I mean, Australia is also part of the Quad. So, of course, education. I mean, the Chinese are trying to catch up, but I mean, that is quite far off in that respect. I think where the US needs to work is probably somehow countering the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative, because at the rate at which it's expanding, it's looking like a never-ending project, and that might be something and I think, I mean, most countries in the West are very worried about that. And I think for that, I mean, there is the MCC in Nepal, where the US is trying to help Nepal build infrastructure like roads and all. But I think that has to be, extended maybe for these other countries, because China, I mean, with the CPEC, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, that's how the BRI started. But now it's like, transcontinental, and Bangladesh is definitely part of it. Nepal is part of it, Sri Lanka, and all these countries. So I think that is one area that the US can work on. But otherwise, I mean, I think that's the main thing. And I think the influence that Chinese have in terms of Confucian institutes teaching Chinese, yes, a lot of students go there, even for higher education. Tsinghua University, for example, is quite popular at the University of Dhaka, for example. But that is not comparable to like going to any US university, of course.
Great. While the BRI may seem like a never-ending project, we are coming up towards the end of our hour. So I want to thank you so much, Dr. Shahid, for your incredible expertise and perspective. And this has been, as I say each year, it has been so wonderful to have everyone here as part of this year's Great Decision Series. I also want to thank again my partner, Kevin Keskis at Portland State University for the Global Leadership and Management Specialization Program, and the fantastic grad students in that program who helped us engage on community conversations and move things into a really wonderful space this year. And I'm going to turn it back over to Derek, and he can take us out into the day. And hopefully we'll see you, Dr. Shahid, soon on another conversation with us.
Thank you, Tim.
Thanks so much, Dr. Shahid, and thank you, Tim. Shout out to our partners at Portland State University and the Foreign Policy Association. And I'd like to thank you, audience, for being part of this. I hope you've enjoyed the 2022 edition of Great Decisions. If you'd like to,
Derek, you have muted yourself.
I apologize. I realized had a technical glitch there. I'd like to thank Dr. Shahid and Tim again. It's wonderful to have this excellent presentation as part of our 2022 Great Decisions. A big shout out to our partners for Portland State University and the Foreign Policy Association for making it such a great year. If you'd like to support World Oregon so we can do more of these programs, invite you to join us at our WorldQuest 2022 fundraiser on April 28th, when we will be raising money from the community to support programs like this and more. Stay tuned for more events coming up later this spring. Dr. Shahid, thanks for going above and beyond, appearing in the middle of the night. And audience, wishing you a safe and healthy rest of the day.
Thank you so much.